Hello, welcome back to the Left Lens. It's Danny Haiphong here, and I'm with my wonderful co-host Margaret Kimberley once again. And we're going to just do a little preview, I guess, of the election. So, what is there to talk about, Margaret? I mean, so much has happened since we've last been able to talk. We've been super busy,
Yeah.
doing a lot of events, doing a lot of interviews, our
hmm
columns every week. So, yeah, where should we start? What do you think, Margaret?
Well, we don't know. It is going to be funny listening to this after election day, but since we last spoke, President Trump was diagnosed with COVID. It seems not to have happened at all. He and a fair number of other people at the White House at a ceremony to announce the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court have tested positive, including the former governor of New Jersey, a senator, people on Trump's staff. He was in the hospital for it's all very Trumpian, of course. So we learned that he tested positive on his one of his tweets on a Friday. He says he's fine. He's just going to rest in the White House. By the end of the day, he goes to Walter Reed Hospital. He leaves a couple days later, including having an impromptu little parade with. He's supposed to be sick, but he's in his car waving.
Oh yeah, the
And then
motorcade.
he goes back to the White House, has this very dramatic moment on a balcony, taking
Yes,
off his
that it
mask.
was like it was like a movie preview,
Yes,
almost like
it
something out
was.
of
It was
Terminator or something.
it was crazy. People, had hissy fits because he wasn't wearing a mask, but he wasn't around anybody. So, whatever. It was his photo op moment. But Trump cannot be taken lightly, lest we forget 4 years ago we were being told he couldn't win. And now we're being told Joe Biden is ahead in the polls. I don't know what that means. I
Hmm.
don't know how reliable polling is at all, because we have the Electoral College, which allows someone who, as Trump did in 2016, the person who got fewer votes to assume the presidency.
Hmm.
So there may be more people telling pollsters that they want Joe Biden, but it doesn't mean that Biden is going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is having huge rallies. His faithful are coming out. Biden has fewer public appearances. Not as many people show up. They say it's because of COVID, and Democrats believe in science, so they're not going to go out, and that's part of it. But I think he's just not does not have the enthusiasm amongst his supporters, the level of enthusiasm that Trump does. So it's up in the air. I don't know who's going to win. I don't feel comfortable making a prediction. Um, Also, we have to remember the impact of voter suppression, the
Mm-hmm.
voter caging, the people being purged off the rolls. I was reading this morning that in Georgia, as an example, people are taken off the rolls because they allegedly moved and didn't re-register, and thousands of people said, "I never moved." So there's all kind of underhanded schemes to keep especially Black people from voting,
Mm-hmm.
because 90% of Black people will vote for the Democrat. People are purged in a variety of schemes. So that is something that has to always be taken into account. So I am not comfortable saying who is going to win.
There's so many aspects to this that I think are just not being talked about. I mean, look, Joe Biden could win or
hmm
Donald Trump could win. I think that there's so many factors that surround all of that. And I don't think we've ever really been in this moment that we're in the United States. It's a very unique one because you
Yep.
throw in a pandemic. It's not like we've never been in an economic crisis before an election that happened in 2008 when Obama won that election, but we also have the pandemic thrown in there.
hmm
Arguably, the effects of this economic crisis aren't even being felt, and worse, the effects of the economic crisis right now are not even being talked about
Right.
seriously.
Yep.
Joe Biden has not been able to do what Obama was able to do during that economic crisis, which is really lay the blame at the feet of the Republican Party as well as pose as some kind of alternative. I think that we've passed through now, I think it's been nearly 12, 13 years since that period of the '08 economic crisis, and things are a lot different in the United States. The political situation is a lot more chaotic, and with the pandemic and the economic crisis coming together at
Hmm.
this time, and then you have Donald Trump, who seemingly at some stages of this campaign was almost trying to lose. It was almost like he was just his stupidity or just his lack of political tact uh, really helped Biden stay in this thing, because I think Trump is right in one sense. If the pandemic didn't happen and his administration had completely neglected, that yeah, Biden may not have had any chance in this election. But we can't make a prediction now, because I think a lot of Biden's chances of winning hinge on the fact that Trump is almost losing it. But then, even after all of the things that have happened, as you stated, the COVID-19 diagnosis and how he handled that personally right before an election, the first presidential debate where, he was obviously trying to send a message to the media and to his supporters, to opposing messages, but strong ones nonetheless. But it didn't really land because he doesn't look like the alternative candidate anymore. He doesn't look like the outsider candidate anymore.
No, he's not.
But at the same time, Joe Biden is, I think, even a worse candidate than Hillary Clinton in some ways, because he doesn't have the political tact. He doesn't have the ability to maneuver around some of his issues. Hillary Clinton, basically, she had the WikiLeaks scandal, the emails,
Hmm.
all of that was hugely important. But now Joe Biden has this Hunter Biden scandal, and all he can do is scream at reporters who try to ask him about it. He doesn't even try to address it. So, in a sense, I think that we have a situation where Joe Biden is such a poor candidate that he could lose this, despite all that Trump has done to basically delegitimize and discredit himself as some kind of outsider candidate. We've seen what the
Yeah.
last 4 years have been like for people. We haven't seen any alternative policies to the war machine or big finance. Taxes for the rich have been cut, all of this. But Joe Biden, in the sense, has no policy prescriptions that can really counter Donald Trump in a lot of ways. So policy has been completely left out of this election. So more so than 2016, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. Biden, the Democrats were determined not to, they are committed to ignoring the issues that would actually help them win, because so, for example, Medicare for all. We already have this horrible health care system where people go broke if they get sick, even if they have insurance. Um, so we need Medicare for all. We need this healthcare system like all the countries we always compare ourselves to, other quote unquote advanced countries, democracies, whatever. All of them, everybody has the right to healthcare. Everybody gets healthcare. They pay little or nothing for it. That is what we need. But that would harm the Democratic Party donor class, insurance companies, the big pharma. That would impact them. So they don't want to put forward this plan which would guarantee them victory. Promising to raise the minimum wage would guarantee them victory. So they are they're doing their usual, trying to win around the edges. And even though now that Trump is himself president and can't claim to be an outsider, even though he does, as an incumbent, he has a record to run on. America has, we have one of the worst COVID death rates in the world, more than 200,000 people dead and rising. We have a so-called second wave, or is it a third wave? I don't know what it is, but the infection rates are rising in various parts of the country. And winter is coming on, the cold weather,
Mm,
which is all, you always see an increase in any communicable disease at this time of year.
yes.
So he should lose in a landslide. It shouldn't be close. There should be no question that Donald Trump is a lame duck and that he will be defeated. But because the Democrats were so concerned and they deep sixed Bernie Sanders again, the person most likely to win, and they went to Joe Biden, of all people, of all their candidates, a man he's been holding it together lately, but for most of the year, frankly, he appeared to be in some state of cognitive decline,
Mm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and himself. So,
Yeah.
so you have this candidate who um, is the result of I'm going to just call it corruption, Democratic Party corruption, who cannot guarantee victory, even though Trump has done such a terrible job with this pandemic. But I also want to say about COVID, I think the U.S. death toll would have been high regardless of who was president. Now, some of these things are unique to Trump. Not heeding the advice of scientists, but we also know that the US was far behind. Everyone wants to blame China. By the end of
Mm.
January, China told the world everything it knew. Yes, it's communicable. Here's the genome. Go ahead and test. And the US messed all of that up. And our healthcare system, again, where people were just turned away, mostly Black people, not treated, um, uh, deciding that some people were essential workers and but didn't get
Mm-hmm.
any protection. Some of those things would have happened regardless, but Trump was the
Yeah.
one that happened on his watch, so he gets the blame, and there should be no question that he would lose, but that's not the case.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And one of the funny things that I'll call them just Trump apologists on the right wing, say is that, oh, Trump's COVID-19 response was good because our system works to privilege governors, and governors took their own measures, and that's how it should be because that's how our system is. And, regardless, there's a lot of problems to that. But one of the ironic things about that is that Joe Biden is not necessarily against that. He has flip-flopped on something as simple as a mask mandate around
Yep.
the country. He said first that he would allow states to make their own decisions about it. Now he's saying, oh, it would be a federal demand on states, and governors wouldn't necessarily have that ability to make their own independent decisions. So he's flip-flopped on that. And we know that the Democratic Party's policy ever since the Democratic Leadership Council in the 90s became the Reagan arm of the party and basically took it over, is that the Democratic Party has done very similar things when it comes to welfare reform in the 90s. Bill
Hmm.
Clinton slashing welfare, a huge component of that was giving block grants to the state instead of having just direct federal funding for welfare for folks. So states were able to decide how much they wanted, and the federal government cut the overall amount and gave small portions to states. And that's basically how the cuts occurred. And that's why people, families, especially many Black women and a lot of Black fathers as well, they make so little trying to take care of children on what's now TANF, the so-called welfare system. So this whole notion that Joe Biden somehow represents an alternative to addressing COVID-19 is not necessarily based in fact, because look, do we think that Joe Biden would have stood up to Andrew Cuomo for his policies in New York State? Probably not, because they would likely be aligned with each other politically, and Andrew Cuomo would have taken the same measures, and you would have had still 30,000 plus people die, 20,000 plus people die here in New York State. And the same goes for elsewhere. California, I know, has had a large number of deaths as well, and that's a Democratic state.
Yes.
So I think um, it's just really important in this moment to recognize that whatever decision people make in this election, I think people should make the decision to, um, you know, focus more on building a movement to really challenge and get rid of this duopoly system that we have. But whatever decision people make within the election should be made with the knowledge of the fact that there are going to be some very stark continuities between the Trump administration and maybe a Biden administration. Regardless of who wins, we're going to see a very similar policy on a lot of issues, especially the bailouts of big finance and Wall Street, especially issues of austerity. So we're
Mm-hmm.
going to see public budgets at all level of governance be slashed. We're going to see the military be given more money to try to contain China or saber rattle with Russia, escalate with Iran. We're going to see very stark continuities in that area. We may see some slight tweaks with the Biden administration on strategy, but we've already seen how Biden flanks to the right on very critical issues like Russia, like Venezuela. We know that a lot of the pain that people are suffering from in this moment, both domestically and abroad, is not going to be addressed. So if that's the case, then our job, I think, in this election is not to champion one candidate or the other. It's to talk about and then organize around the problems that we're facing right now, but also the problems that we can expect to have regardless of who wins.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Biden's committed to austerity. And that's why we have this high, one of the reasons we have this high death rate. We people living in poverty, the stimulus bills in the COVID era were never enough. Everyone got a meager 1,200, at the most $1,200. People who are unemployed did get an additional $600 a week. That ended in July. And now it's October. What are people going to do? There are people who are being evicted, people who are going hungry, people who are being made homeless because of this system. Now, the Democrats say they want a bill, and there's this haggling between the Democrats and Republicans. Um, but the bottom line is we live in a country that does not care about human needs come last. That's never the priority.
Yep.
The priority for the duopoly is making their donor class happy. Those are a variety of groups, and giving direct aid to the people, which is the only way. After COVID shut down so many sectors of the economy, the only thing to do was to make people whole. But that's not the priority. And so we have a lot of suffering, and it's going to continue into 2021. So we will see if Biden wins, and the other thing with the US, the fact because we have this divided government, he could win, but the Republicans could still control the Senate.
Yes.
And there doesn't seem to be any thinking about Democrats losing the House. But so we don't know. Not only do we know not who's not going to win, but we do know that austerity is still the order of the day
Hmm.
for the Democrats as well as it is for the Republicans.
Yeah. Yeah, and when even if Biden, and I think this is important because you know it's not like there aren't differences between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, even rhetorically. Of course, there
Mhm.
are. There would not be an election at all if there was such stark, if the similarities between the two were indiscernible. But when we look at, let's say, how the last Democratic Party administration behaved with even a supermajority, within Congress and in the House and the Senate, we know that a lot of the things that people want and wanted, especially at that time, single payer, employee free choice act to make unionization easier, those things went out the window,
Mhm.
and the Democrats negotiated a huge bailout, a continuation of the bailout for Wall Street that amounted to trillions of dollars. And we got the Affordable Care Act, which was a huge concession to insurance and pharmaceutical companies, especially the insurance companies, which now basically have total control over healthcare almost just without question.
Hmm.
Even things like Medicaid, even though Medicaid was expanded, it was expanded on the basis that a lot of these private plans would administer it. And we see states across the country, like New York State, for example, has been cutting back on Medicaid, but doing so under the auspices of giving big corporations, big insurance corporations, more control over the services that are provided. And we know that insurance companies really only care about how to make networks smaller and smaller and smaller and to provide less and less care, but yet disguise themselves as somehow addressing people's healthcare needs. And I think that is really where the crime of this election is going to be or is going to need to be investigated, is how Joe Biden, if he wins, he has a shot. I mean, look, he has a shot at winning. We can acknowledge that. He also has a big shot, I think, at losing. But if he wins, we know what the narrative is going to be. First, we know that the so-called liberal class, the corporate Democrats, they are going to go into overdrive to make the election about decency and decency winning out. And we know that they're going to abandon, if let's say more young people than we think vote for Biden, more workers than we think vote for Biden, we know that they're going to abandon all of their needs. And
Sure they will.
they're going to then move towards how do we frame and brand this election as a victory for decency and the American dream and exceptionalism, and Biden kind of being this return to normalcy, so to speak. But we know that Donald Trump isn't going to go away, and we know that Donald Trump will likely remain the topic of conversation. I think it's if Donald Trump loses, it would be a mistake to think that somehow he's not going to be the sole focus of the Democratic Party's conversation. I
Sure,
think he will remain so,
he
and I
will.
think he will eat that up. He will use that to build his own cachet, his own brand. He'll probably remain in politics in some form or another in the GOP, and we may be in a very similar situation politically than we think, even if Biden wins, in both the terms of the optics and in terms of policies.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. First of all, Democrats already use Trump as their poster child for
Mm-hmm.
inaction. Any question, any demand, anything is immediately met with, well, we're better than Trump. Do you want Trump? So if Biden wins, that will be the answer to everything. I'm afraid that if Biden wins, there will be this collective sigh of relief that Trump has been defeated.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect that most Democrats will think it's enough to have him in the White House instead of Trump, and to just let the Democrats, who are supposed to be so much better, let them govern and do whatever they want without any question from the rest of us. I mean, Trump is this singularly awful person, this vile individual who doesn't try to hide it, one of the things that people are in fear of. He has quite openly messaged his the right wing, people with guns, militias of all kinds during the one debate. Apparently, there aren't going to be any more debates, is how it looks. He said of the Proud Boys, just to mention among one group, he said, just stand back and stand by, implying, of course, that there's some message he's going to give. He's implied he wouldn't leave office. He has said um, he is delegitimizing voting by mail, which is, I think, going to be used more by Democrats than Republicans. So that adds another layer of uncertainty. So people are afraid and triggered by Trump, and with reason. I'm not saying there's no reason to feel that way, but all of this adds to um, this belief that the only first of all, Americans are only encouraged to vote. We're not encouraged to do anything else politically. We're not encouraged to organize. We're not encouraged to we are discouraged from doing anything else. Actually, the things that actually will guarantee us change, we're told not to do or not to bother with. So the impact of Trump is going to linger for a long time, and his presence as the president will ensure that the Democrats will have another weapon to beat people or to browbeat, to vote shame, to propagandize Democrats into being silent as they proceed to do everything they want to do.
Yes, I've always questioned whether the Democratic Party, at this point, given the crisis of the entire system, the crisis of imperialism, the crisis of the economic system, I've always questioned since Obama left office in 2016, and then now especially, whether the Democratic Party really does care about winning the Oval Office. I don't know if it. I mean, of course, I think it would be completely baseless to say, oh yeah, they don't care at all. But I will say that there is, I think, a relative sense of calm about the way that the Democratic Party approaches uh, politics now. This kind of hubris you see with Nancy Pelosi going on even
Mm-hmm.
CNN and making kind of an embarrassment out of herself with Wolf Blitzer, not expecting any tough questions, not expecting anything difficult, calling
No,
herself awesome, calling herself the power of the speaker is awesome, yet then saying that, oh, there's so many components to legislating a stimulus bill on Wolf Blitzer's show, and I think there is this underestimation that's intentional of Donald Trump and
mm-hmm.
everything that he represents, because Donald Trump has benefited both the corporate media, which is very, very much intertwined with the Democratic Party at this point in terms of their ratings and their profits, but it's also benefited the Democratic Party elite in the sense that Donald Trump is the perfect foil to
Mm-hmm.
blame everything on. He's even better than, let's say, a George W. Bush, who represented a pretty significant faction within the ruling class as a whole. I mean, going all the way back to his grandfather, his dad in the CIA, multiple times, and then also, of course, president as well. But with George W. Bush, he represented kind of a member of their team. While Donald Trump, not necessarily a member of their team. He's a member of the oligarchy of the corporate class, but he is not a member of their political team. He's not a part of the state, and he represents this perfect foil for them now that he is there, and he has so many qualities about him which are easily targeted. But then there's this other aspect of this that's very interesting to just bring up really quick is there have been conversations about, okay, Joe Biden is so obviously impaired. He has cognitive issues. He's on the older side. Even to this day, at the town halls, you see he makes so many errors. I mean, I think at
Mm-hmm.
one of the town halls, he was talking about like a
He
young
said he was
black
ready for the
male in a
Senate.
yeah, he said he was ready for the Senate. Then he was talking about a young black male in a hood, potentially being like, don't arrest him or beat him up. The police shouldn't do that because he could be another no, poet laureate or something very just off-putting that should have been kind of like front and center. You still got a lot of issues. He can't really speak, and they chose him. The Democratic Party elite coalesced around him. They pulled in all of their Republican machinery, all of
Yep.
their military industrial complex machinery, intelligence machinery. They coalesced around him. They knocked the legs out of all the other candidates that were supposedly that were also on the establishment side, but competing against him. They pulled them all in and said, "Okay, we're going for Biden." And you know, just the fact that they chose him, I think represents uh, and you still see to this day that Obama says this is going to be closer than we think it's going to be. And the reason why he says that is because I think a lot of the Democratic Party elite knows that he might lose.
Oh,
But the
sure.
donors don't really care. Why don't they care? Well, Donald Trump has served their interests in many different ways, from the military to the financial bailout to the big tax breaks, and then the media. The media is such a big component of how the US operates now, because short of being able to do anything for the people, to do anything for workers, oppressed people, black people, forget it. Short of doing anything for the masses of people, the media, the portrayal of the United States, the narrative, the public relations part of politics becomes predominant. And that's what we have right now, that is what's predominant. How does the US look to not even the world? I think that's been thrown out. I don't think Joe Biden says, oh, we're not going to send kisses and things to dictators. I think that looks bad around the world. And so I don't think they're really concerned about how the US looks around the world so much as, can the US just remain legitimate in the eyes of a population that, as you say often, is the most propagandized in the
Mhm.
world?
Yeah, they uh, you touched on so many things there. I think, do the Democrats want to win? Not as they're willing to give up the presidency rather than violate the interests of their donor class. So they prefer to win, but if if they really wanted to win, they would have gone with the candidate who talked about the things that would guarantee them a victory. It's very simple. So they're hoping to, nibble around the edges, and they hope to thread that needle finely enough that they can get back into office. The CEO, it's funny, the CEO of Boeing said that he's not worried about the election. Boeing is going to be fine no matter who wins. That's a guy who knows what the real deal is. So there are people like that who know they're always going to be taken care of. And so we find ourselves in this situation. And the whole thing about dictators, that's just some stupid trope made up to try to make Trump appear. It's a Russiagate, continuation, Russiagate
Mm-hmm.
spinoff, that he does business with. He likes the dictators. Every American president likes dictators. What the hell are people talking about? Um, and Biden vows to continue loving the dictatorship of the U.S. I mean, he thinks he can win Florida by saying he's going to continue sanctions on Venezuela. He's not winning Florida. That's not happening. But you notice that they always brag about getting endorsements from Republicans. John McCain's widow endorses Joe Biden. Who cares? That's not going to move any voters. This Lincoln Project, which is just a scam. Anybody who gave them money is just the sucker. They are promoting themselves. And we saw this in 2016. The Republican Party establishment does not have a hold over the Trump voters. They don't care. So these are scams used to convince liberals, actually, to stay in the Biden camp because they think this is somehow going to defeat Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're gonna probably soon conclude.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that this is one of those moments where there are two lessons that can be learned. One is that fear-driven politics is the correct politics, and so, let's not shake anything up. Let's not try to push policies forward, push movements forward, push a vision for society that can actually meet the needs of people forward. We can go that route and, uh, you know, kind of throw up our hands, and whoever wins wins, and that's sort of what we have to stomach. And I think most people are doing that here in the United States. Or I think those are the two options. You could either throw in the towel and just allow the duopoly to work as it is, and hold on to these kind of excuses that I think the ruling class have made up for us. Oh, lesser two evils. Oh, we need to um, make sure Trump isn't in office because of fascism. We need to, or on the opposite end, who really cares, right? So I think we have a lot of challenges ahead with this election. It's going to dominate the conversation well after November 3rd, as we all
Mhm.
know, because whoever wins won't either, retake office until, won't reaffirm until January, if the case of Trump, or in the case of Biden, won't take office until January. So there will be several months even after this election where the election will be the conversation. And it's a guarantee also that we'll be in this economic crisis as well. The recovery for the United States after losing over a third of its economy during the pandemic, right? I think negative growth of somewhere about 33% is where we're at. So that's going to have huge implications. The food lines all over here in New York City are extremely long. It's the case all over the country. Tens of millions of people are relying upon
Mm-hmm.
food banks. We know that
Yep.
8 million people now, more people are now in poverty. And we know that in the next few months, there'll be several other cases of police homicide of Black people. That's just kind of how it works here in the United States. We know there will be some sort of foreign policy move by the Trump administration, either leading up to the election or after the election to kind of cement either a legacy in the case of Trump if he loses, or to cement the policy agenda going forward for all of the different players that care about how the United States conducts itself abroad. You know, the military-industrial complex, Israel, all the partners. They will be looking for guidance on that, and election seasons tend to be when uh, the political class is showing off exactly where the U.S. is going to go in the future. So yeah, we it's going to be a very difficult time, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the most important thing for people to do is whoever is listening to this, whoever is involved in political struggles and movements, is to not surrender. Not surrender to
Right.
the corporate duopoly, not surrender to things as they are, but to continuously try to figure out, well, what are the politics that we need moving forward, and what are the forms of organization that we need moving forward to really ensure that our politics are embodied in society rather than just some opposing force that right now does not hold any power, right? And I think acknowledging that powerlessness and moving forward to searching for ways to gain actual power, not just electoral power, which I don't think is even possible right now, given the way that AOC and the rest behave. I don't think electoral power is really within the duopoly is really possible. I think what's
No.
possible is building grassroots alternatives that then bring us to that point where we can shift politics, transform society, rather than just try to reform what I think now is an irreformable
It is. It
system.
is. And I agree with you completely. I think we get the order wrong. It's putting the cart before the horse. Electoral victory comes after the mass action. That's what people should concentrate on. And the other thing before we go, I want to point out, because there's so much voting by mail this year, we may not know who the winner is on November 3rd. Just
That's
counting
true.
the vote is going to take a very long time. So we'll come back after November 3rd and we'll dissect that.
Yes, we will. Yeah, the outcome, you're right. I didn't even think about that. The outcome of this election may not be decided on November 3rd, and all of the optics and circus show politics that have been leading up to this moment, I think will be at their height. All of this, oh, Trump isn't leaving. Oh, is he or is he not? I'm sure Trump will play around with that in terms of
Mhm.
if he loses, he'll play around with that legally and whatever other mechanisms that he can employ. But it's a great media suck up. It's a great way to get media attention. So, yeah, no, we'll definitely be returning next month in November to break some of this down for you all. This is a monthly program. And so, folks that really want to continue to follow us, Margaret and I are always on Twitter. We're always on social media promoting our work at Black Agenda Report. Weekly, we are there. I know Margaret is everywhere. And, we're doing events and appearances in the media all the time. We have Patreons. Um, we both have books, and we're on social media. So follow us, subscribe to this as well, to this channel, subscribe to the show, share it. And yeah, we'll be back with you in roughly a month.
See you guys soon. Peace. Peace out.